Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Well, I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Well, hey everyone, I'm Eric Erickson, back with you for Guitar Academy Lesson 2, and today we're going to learn to play Amazing Grace. Not going to play it the way I just played it, but I just played it in a different way, just so you can continue to see that guitar has so many different ways that you can use it to get different sounds and express yourself. I'm happening to use a bottleneck slide. It's called a slide, and it comes from a wine bottle. It's just the glass neck of a bottle. And the old blues guys started this back about a century ago. Great way to get different sounds out of your guitar. But we're going to learn the basics of this song, which is just 3 chords, A, D, and E. So last time we learned the various parts of the guitar. Today we're going to learn a few chords, and we're going to try to play this old spiritual song that goes back a long ways, and a lot of people know it. But first thing, we need to get your guitars in tune so they sound good. And take your guitar out, hold it in your lap, and I always like to start just appreciating it. So last time we talked about the various parts of the guitar, from the headstock to the neck to the body and all the different small parts of it that you should know and understand the terms. So just appreciate your guitar for a minute. Look at it. In my particular case, I'm using a different one than last time. There's no pick guard. I typically play this with my fingers so I don't scratch the top. It doesn't have any fret markers. I've been playing a long time and happen to know where I am on the neck. And then the wood is just beautiful. A German spruce top. It's got Hawaiian koa back and sides. Isn't that gorgeous? It's got Honduras mahogany for the neck and African ebony for the fingerboard. So trees from all over the world were sacrificed to build this beautiful instrument that then I can use to make beautiful sound. So you have to appreciate that and have a little reverence for the instrument that you're happening to learn. It's a great instrument. As I mentioned last time we got together, I just love it, and I hope you learn to love the instrument too. And it can give you a lot of joy through your life. But you've got to practice to get there, because some of it is a little frustrating when you start. And one of those things is you'll take your guitar out and it won't really be in tune. So grab your pick. We learned how to hold that pick in your fingers last time, and just strum your guitar. And in my case, that didn't sound very good, just using a basic E chord. So we need to get it in tune. Now, you all should have one of those little electric tuners that you can just clip to the headstock. It picks up the vibrations and it tells you when you're on the right note. But there's a lot of different ways, so I'm going to show you one way to get your guitar in tune. If you have that little thing clipped to your headstock, that's a great way to start. So I showed you last time, with a tuning fork that happens to be an A note, and the 5th string is an A note on the guitar. I'll take it a little out of tune. And bring those two things into the same note. The note of the fork as it vibrates, and the note of the string as it vibrates. The point being, turn that string until you can get the tuner to tell you that that's an A note on the 5th string. And then you can go to the 6th string, press it at the 5th fret, just play that one note, and it should be the same note as that 5th string just ringing open without you pressing anything. So clearly, that's much lower note than this, so I need to bring this string up. You want those notes to be the same. I've been playing a long time, my ear's used to it, I can get the guitar in tune pretty quickly, but it takes a lot of practice initially. Get your ear used to it, what it should sound like, and rely on that tuner to tell you that those are both an A. And then this string should say an E when you look at the tuner. That the 6th string open is an E note. So then the next string, you want to get the 4th string in tune, so press the 5th string, we already tuned that one, at the 5th fret. Compared to the 4th string open That should be the same note. Adjust it if it's not. Go to the next string, press the 4th string at the 5th fret, compare it to the 3rd string, open. Those are the same note. Get them in tune if they're not. And then to get the 2nd string in tune, you've got to go down 1 fret on the 3rd string. It's the only difference you have to remember. Press the 4th fret of the 3rd string and compare it to the 2nd string, open. Bring it into tune if it's not. And then press the 5th fret of the 2nd string to get the 1st string on its own to sound the same. It's not, so I've got to bring this one up. A little higher. And then when you play an E chord, it should ring nice and true. So get used to going through that regimen. It takes some practice, but every time you pick up the guitar, it's probably not going to be in perfect tune. You'll find most people who've been playing for a while, they're tuning their guitar constantly, because as temperatures changes and the wood flexes and the strings get stretched, it goes out of tune. And so you're constantly using these tuning machines to get the guitar back in tune so it sounds pretty. So just tuning itself is a bit of a practice for you, and you should be working on that. But to play the actual song, we're going to work on learning these 3 chords: A, D, and E. And with those 3 chords, we can play Amazing Grace, the entire song, like I opened this video. The tough thing is, I mentioned it last time, your fingers are going to probably hurt a little bit. You have to get used to pressing. You remember I mentioned I've got calluses on the tips of my fingers. Those develop with time as you practice, so you really don't feel any pain as you press those strings, but it might take a little while. So let's start with this A chord. And in your Guitar Academy program guide or lesson guide, you'll see that it shows a chord diagram for A, a D, and an E for Amazing Grace. And the A chord shows a diagram with the 1st string at the 2nd fret, the 1st finger at the 2nd fret on the 4th string, the 2nd finger on the 3rd string, 2nd fret, and the 3rd finger on the 2nd string, 2nd fret. So they're all in a line right there on the 2nd fret. You just go 1, 2, 3. And try to press from the 5th string, not press, but strum from the 5th string all the way to the 1st string. You'll notice in the chord diagram, there's a little X above the 6th string behind the nut, the visual they have of the nut, where all the strings start. You remember that from last time. Try not to play that one, because if you play an A chord with this one strummed too, it sounds a little off. It's not wrong, you'll hit it on occasion and that's okay. But it's better if you start with the 5th string for an A chord, because this is an A note, and you want the lowest note to be that note of the chord. So that's what an A chord should sound like. The 5th string rings open, the 1st string rings open, and you've got to take your 1st finger to the 4th string, 2nd fret, 2nd finger to the 3rd string, 2nd fret, 3rd finger to the 2nd string, 2nd fret, and strum them so that the 5th string and the 1st string ring open. If you get a little lazy and your hand comes over, that 1st string probably isn't going to ring. It'll sound like that. You want them to all resonate and ring nice and true. It takes a little practice, so you just work on that. Just getting your fingers to play that A chord. Take your fingers off. Try to get your brain to start to remember where they go when you're playing an A chord, because you'll be playing a song and you'll see it says A, and you have to think quickly, where do my fingers go? Well, with practice, you'll know without much thinking that that's where your fingers go. Next, we're going to learn the D chord. So in the song Amazing Grace, you start on the A chord, but then you have to shift at one point to play a D chord. Pretty common chord, you'll be playing it a lot as you learn this instrument. And you'll notice on the chord diagram, again in your booklet, that the sixth string and the fifth string have X's behind the nut, meaning that try not to play those. If you play D chord with all of them ringing, this doesn't sound quite right. Again, this fourth string is a D note, so you want that to be the lowest note of the chord. And it just sounds nice and true and pretty. But for the D, we can let that fourth string ring open, but the first string has to go to the first finger, excuse me, has to go to the third string, second fret. With the third finger, the next one you lay down, at the second fret, or excuse me, second string, I keep doing that. Second string, third fret, and then squeeze your second finger back behind them all to press down the first string at the second fret, right there. So all together they ring nice and true. Think in your mind of a little triangle you make with your fingers. So again, to practice, take your hand off the fingerboard and then think, okay, the first finger to the third string, second fret, third finger to the second string, third fret, and the second finger to the first string, second fret. So right behind them all. And then just strum from the fourth string right through the ones you just pressed. And again, if your fingers kind of go over, this one will press this string rather than let this finger ring true, and it'll sound funky again. So you have to make sure this one comes down nice and straight. So it's not laid flat across the fingerboard like that. You kind of bring your finger straight down so that right behind it, this note isn't blocked by your third finger. So again, that takes some practice. You take your hand off the fingerboard, bring your first finger down where it needs to go, the third finger down where it needs to go, and the second finger down where it needs to go. And just look at your diagram, and again, you've got to program it in your brain so that when you play D chord, your fingers know exactly where to go. So practice that. We'll have to practice switching between an A and a D. We'll think about that in a minute, and that's where it starts to get tricky. But the first thing you need to learn is how to get your fingers in the right position to play these chords. That third chord is an E chord, one of my favorite chords, because on the guitar, it just lets all the strings resonate. You play them all, you'll notice in the chord diagram that the sixth string has a little circle behind it, means it rings open. You don't have to press anything. The second string and the first strings ring open, and then you press down 3 strings again, but the whole guitar gets to resonate. So start with the E chord with, again, your first finger going to the first fret, but on the third string. That's the first finger to lay down. Then take your second finger and bring it all the way over to the fifth string and press that one down at the second fret. Take your third finger and bring it right behind it and press down the fourth string at the second fret. So those notes should sound nice and true when you press them down. And again, you have to make sure your fingers are coming down straight, otherwise you'll get some thunks in there with your fingers blocking them. So that's what it should sound like. A big E chord, you start with your first finger, press it down at the first fret, third string. You bring your second finger over, you bring your third finger over on the second fret, get the fifth string and the fourth strings pressed down, and then strum all 6 strings. It should resonate and sound nice and true. So again, to practice this chord, you've got to get your brain programmed to know E chord. I know exactly where my fingers go. So take your hand off, think E chord, first finger on the third string where it needs to go, second finger on the fifth string where it needs to go, third finger on the fourth string where it needs to go. And look at your chord diagram and you can see how it all lays out for you there. So now you've learned 3 chords. And again, you'll have to practice getting your fingers to get there in the right position. So the next thing you need to work on after you start to get those chords under your fingers is making the chord switches. So Amazing Grace starts in A, but then goes to D, and then goes back to A, plays the A, and goes to E. So you can see I can make those switches pretty smoothly and you don't really hear any change. Of course, I've been playing a long, long time, but I had to start just like you to make sure that if I'm playing an A and need to go to a D, my fingers just quickly go there. So it takes practice. But to start with an A chord, the one you learned with first, second, third fingers all in a row, from the fourth string, third string, second string, and then letting the others ring true. Then you switch to a D, which means your whole set of fingers need to go a little closer to the floor, but I like to sort of start by moving that second finger back to the first string and bringing that first finger down here to the third string on the second fret, and then that third finger needs to come down right between them on the second string. So practice that move from an A to a D. And then back to an A. Again, kind of let your first finger lead the way over to that fourth string, and all of them press down in a row. So now let's practice going from an A chord to an E chord. So on this one, again, I like to have your first finger lead the way. You're playing an A chord with the first, second, third fingers all on the second fret. And then to get to that E, you have to have your first finger come down to that third string, first fret. And then your second finger and third fingers come down to the fifth and fourth strings where they need to go. So from the A, you're here, and then it switches to the E. So again, you'll have to practice those. I'd take up a whole nother half hour of video time if I kept going over it, but